So yesterday, we had a big trade. Jake Walman got traded with the second-round pick we acquired from the Panthers for future considerations to San Jose. Flannel, what are your immediate thoughts on that?
Would you say that Jake Walman was getting rid of salary?
Yes.
Is that the assumption? All right, so
because I also think Jake Walman's pretty mid. Like he would have been your third pair defenseman when you're ready to win a Stanley Cup, and that $3.4 million is way too much money to pay someone who's their third line defenseman.
Here's the thing, though, and I'm gonna ruffle a lot of feathers, but you know what? Who gives a damn? Who gives a damn? To me, needing to shed Jake Walman's salary, which I agree with you on your premise, even though last year when they obviously weren't ready to win, he was at times your first pairing at a defenseman. Needing to shed Jake Walman's salary in conjunction with a second-round pick, that to me highlights some of the failings of Steve Yzerman and his acquisitions. Because whenever I bring up anything about them not making the playoffs be a failure or that they collapsed to end the season, and I bring up some of the moves that immediately, like the Petrie and Hull, you'll get the response of like, oh, so you need him to hit 100%. Steve Yzerman, the reality is he hasn't even hit close to 100%. He's made some good moves and they've gotten incrementally better, but in the past couple of years, you brought in Olli Maatta via free agent who makes $3 million a year. You acquired Ville Husso via trade who makes $4.75 million a year. And in his year as a starter, he had an .896 save percentage, which was 38th in the NHL, by the way. You brought in Andrew Kopp as a free agent who's your third highest. He's your third highest cap hit going into this year, but was your 10th highest scorer last year. And then in last season's free agency, the disaster that was Justin Hull, $3.4 million, who didn't even play, and Jeff Petrie, who was worse than mid, makes 2.3. That's my thing, is that a lot of those moves had a direct correlation into why the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs last year, and it made it so that you had to dump a salary in Jake Walman, even though I think Jake Walman would have been a valuable member maybe on the third line to this team.
That's true, but the other two names that you mentioned aren't going to be moved. They're pretty much unmovable at this point. They also, I believe, are one-year deals going into this season, so they're expiring. So, and Walman had two years left on his term. This is around the exact term that they're going to sign Kane for, and everyone's like, oh, Kane's going to get $5 million. Kane's not getting $5 million. His hip's fucked up. He is 35 or 36 years old. He does not play defense anymore. And Joe Pavelski got a 1 year, $3.5 million with $2.5 million worth of incentives from the Stars this year. And that's a true two-way forward who still put up 67 points and played in 82 games. Kane did not play in 82 games and had the same amount of points.
No, and let me just say this. And yeah, Kane, he was very, very good last year. He was what I would call one of Steve Yzerman's, in terms of what he did last year in a half a season, kind of one of his special signings. But unfortunately, it didn't lead them to the playoffs, but I do think he made them better. My point with what I said and those bad signings or bad free agent or bad trade acquisitions was not that they should dump Olli Maatta instead or they should dump Andrew Kopp instead. My point is that those were objectively not good signings. There's no way that you can spin it any other way. I can see why they did it because Andrew Kopp had such a good stretch with the Rangers when he got traded 3 years ago. But with the Red Wings, he has been a lot less than what you expected. Same with Ville Husso. He had a really good year with the Blues, and then he came to the Red Wings and completely shit his pants. I understand that the defense wasn't good, but save percentage was under 900. That's my point. That's all I'm saying is that Lord Stevie, God Stevie, is not perfect.
What?
No one is.
Sam.
Hey, tell Neil Rule that. Tell Darren McCarty that. Wow. Tell the Steve Butts in the chat that. Like, just a fan. Tell them that. Tell Chuck Brewer that.
The captain?
Tell Chase Amley that.
The captain,
tell them.
Sam?
How dare you
playing,
disrespect
man.
the captain?
1919. Come on.
So who's this space for? Is this for Stamkos or Draisaitl? Is this for a goalie, or is this for Chase Amley says maybe more room for vets and our core D?
I believe it's all the above. I believe that they've now moved up to $36 million in cap space, which for the NHL that is a ton. That is enough to sign 7 players around.
So you think they're getting busy?
They're about to get really busy. They're in like I said, they're rumors for goalies, John Gibson, Soros, Aiden Hill. They're in rumors for Jakub Chichurin. They have so many options that they could go for. I would love to see Jakub Chichurin. We needed a top-of-the-line defenseman. I'd love to see a goalie. And then I'd love to see someone like Stamkos or someone like Reinhart to really filled the rest of this roster. If you bring in an A-level player in each position group, this team will be able to win a playoff series next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and and I understand that there's going to be some moves made in conjunction that'll make this make more sense. I just think right now that Jake Walman would have been a more valuable piece on this team than, say, Oli Mata, Justin Hole, and Jeff Petrie. But I understand that's not what we're talking about. And just I've got to go back at Shad really quick because and this isn't me being mean. This is just me explaining something. Sam simply can't fathom the thought of a player not being a superstar can still be an impactful player for that team. That's what JT Comfort is. That's what Ben Sherratt is. Guys like that. I respect those signings. That's what Robbie Fabry was, who they traded for.
Those were great signings.
That's and I'm down with that. I'm down with those, and those guys, they're actually impactful role players. I don't think that Justin Hole certainly was not. He didn't even play the last part of the season. I don't think Jeff Petrie was, and I don't think Oli Mata was. Although he's not as bad as those two, he's still not on the level of Jake Walman to me. And the same with Ville Husso and Andrew Kopp, especially with the money that you paid him. He has made impactful role player signings in trades. So that does exist. I'm highlighting the worst ones, but that's not all of them. And you agreed with me about Fabry, Comfer, and Sherratt.
I 100% do agree. And one thing I'm not going to agree with, and this is something that Neil and DMAC have been saying, and I'm going to flip the script on them, and I'm sure we'll talk about it today on Big D Energy, but Kosa and Augustine, not this year, but next year, I don't see it. I think that that's betting on rookie parlays, like they like to say about the Tigers. I don't think that's a good idea. I think if you can bring in a veteran goalie, all these goalies seem to be only getting 2 to 3 year deals if they get extensions. From what I'm hearing from Twitter and stuff, on everyone who I follow and I've been checking into, I just think that there's no way that we shouldn't upgrade if it's there. And even if you do upgrade, you bring one of them in to be the backup and learn from a veteran elite goaltender, because that's where you want them to end up.
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because, I think there's a lot of promise for Kosa and Augustine, although math will dictate that one of them probably won't work out. But if one of them does, that's all well and good. But yeah,
you only need one.
Yes, are they going to be ready this season? Is Kosa going to be ready this season? Probably not. And if we're talking about having Ville Husso and Alex Lyon there as your goaltenders 1A and 1B, I think you're basically not punting, but you're basically saying that year 6 you're okay with no playoffs. That's what I think you're kind of implying, because that is not good enough. And I understand that there's not a myriad of goalies to go after, but you mentioned Aiden Hill, for example. You put Aiden Hill on last year's teams, they're in the playoffs.
Oh, 100%.
100%. And that's my point.
Any
and that's
of those goalies I named, I think.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to be able to ask you, both of you guys, this. What do you think of this comment from Ninja Ginger? The Iser plan is a forever rebuild.
No, it's not. It's coming to an end very quickly. You can see it. You can see the infrastructure that is.
Sales space.
Sorry, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
So you think it is forever? But the infrastructure is there. They're laying it down. It is the hardest rebuild in sports. You have to literally have every single person on all 4 lines has to be comparable. You can't have anyone who is a liability out there. That is the game of hockey. You saw with the Panthers. Every single guy on their roster contributed to them winning that Stanley Cup.
According to Neil, it's been 4 years, not 6.
No, and next year's probably year 2, right?
And we've agreed on this. Ken Holland left this team in the shitter.
No, and I understand, but I thought it was a failure not making the playoffs last year. And then you hear Nimwits in the chat be like,
but we just would have got whooped in the first round. Who gives a shit?
I give a shit, because playoff matters. Also, when it's in conjunction with a collapse, because that's what it was. With the playoffs on the line, in 18 games, they went 5-12-3. But they also didn't have Larkin. If they had Larkin for that extended amount of time, they would have 100% made the playoffs. Injuries happen, by the way. Injuries happen. You're not supposed to take a shit and lose 6 in a row and get murdered 6 games in a row when one guy goes out.
Any team that loses their captain, it's detrimental. Do you think if the Oilers would have lost McDavid in the regular season that they would have took a tail dive? Yes.
They wouldn't have been outscored in a stretch of games 36-12. No, they would not have.
Well, they still have Draisaitl. We don't have Draisaitl. We don't have an elite duo like that. We have Larkin, who is a elite two-way forward in the NHL, and you can argue that with a wall because he is amazing defensively. And then Lucas Raymond is a rising star. We have scoring, but it's not at anywhere near Draisaitl and McDavid. The nosedive was always bound to happen when Larkin went out.
And see, like, I'm just not down for that, especially when if you wanted to make the playoffs, why not beat Washington at home? I know that their goalie had an out of his mind game.
They should have.
They should have beat Arizona at home when they had a chance.
outplayed them in that game. In that Washington game, Lindgren stole that game.
I understand that, but you shouldn't put yourself in a position where you need that game. You shouldn't put yourself in a position that you can win the last 3 games and it doesn't matter because they still didn't make it. And if you tell me about those rules, you're soft. Ooh. You're soft as baby Dookie. That's what you are if you tell me about bad rules.
Not baby shit.
Well, that's true, because they could have just won the game.
Tell me a rule that!
This is the best hockey talk in the region, bro. In the state. Oh, my gosh.
Sponsored by Gerber's.
No, there's another big rumor yesterday. I didn't think that we were going to be in on Jake Grunzel, but apparently we just hopped into the sweepstakes. We're one of the 3 teams in on Jake Grunzel. What do you think about that?
Oh, dude,
instantly kumbaya.
No, we talk about, here's the thing. We talk about Patrick Kane as somebody who they may or may not bring back. If they don't, like, I'm cool with Jake Gunsel. I'm cool with Sam Reinhart. I'm cool with Steven Stamkos. Hell, I'm even cool with Jonathan Marchessault. I'm okay with any of those guys, personally. I think they would make the team better.
I think Jake Gunsel is a very interesting fit because he also brings a level of physicality that this team truly lacks, and that cannot be overshadowed because this team is very small, and they also need a physical defenseman like Zadorov, someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and we shall see. And for the record, before people think that I'm calling for Steve Yzerman's job, he's a good GM, and I think that people have. I think this was well put on 97.1. Even I'll give them credit. He's a good GM. I don't know if he's special yet. I think the draft picks of Sider and Raymond look to be special, but we shall see. I know there's a lot of draft picks like Danielson and Casper and ASP and all of that who we have a lot of high hopes for that are going to be, I think Casper's going to be in the NHL this year, but you just don't know. I wanted playoffs year 5. And for the record, for all of you nimwits in the chat, no, because you'll say, oh, you expect them to be the Florida Panthers year 3? No, I said playoffs. And I understand that it's different than football. I understand that it's different than the NFL. I understand that it's different than Brad Holmes getting to the NFC Championship in year 3. I get it that it's different. I'm talking about, as Jim Mora would say, playoffs.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs.
We're talking about playoffs? Let's cut the shit here. They need to make the playoffs this year. No doubt. There's no way that this team, this season can be a success. I don't care what Steve Yzerman says. He 100% believes that this team should make the playoffs. He might be trying to cover his own ass with that press conference, but he knows.
Something's happening.